Dr. Mark Changizi here with your Science Moment. Leaders worldwide did their COVID interventions not by virtue of independent analysis and cost-benefit analyses, country by country, making their own decisions. They did it by virtue of copycatting one another. And in fact, I wanted to focus on this. We've talked about consensus before and how it's a terrible argument and it's sort of extra terrible to censor on the basis of what's non-consensus for reasons we've discussed. But here's a great example. Here's April 7th and Donald Trump justifying why he's chosen to recommend lockdowns in the United States and the other interventions. And let's just listen to his justification.
Sweden's suffering very, very badly. It's a way of doing it, but everybody has been watching everybody else. And so far, almost every country has done it the way we've done it. We've chosen to do it.
So there's Donald Trump. He mentioned Sweden. He thinks they're not doing a good job. But his argument at the end of the day is that, look, there's all these other countries that have been doing exactly what we've been doing. Now, again, the only time that kind of argument, the only time that consensus is a good argument is if there were a bunch of separate, isolated islands, so to speak, independent labs, not talking to one another, who independently come to the decision that, hey, Proposition P is right, P is true, P is true. And they all, oh, holy crap, there's a consensus that P is true. That's not the case ever in reality because there are always groupthinks and people influencing one another. And it's especially not the case when people are freaking out in February and early March, all worried about an altogether novel virus, disproportionately dangerous virus, and we've all got to do something and so forth. Anybody who had any intuitions about how social groups work would have seen that the fact that all of these other countries are doing it is only because other countries were doing it. And they were doing it because other countries were doing it. This is how virality works, right? It just is because these ideas spread. I'm going to do it because they're doing it. And the reason they're doing it is they thought I was going to do it. And so on, around in circles and around in circles and in loops it goes, right? Ultimately, the justification was none. The justification was copycatting. The justification was groupthink. The justification was mass hysteria. And the one counterexample, Sweden, who held the line on civil liberties, was the pariah. Right? So you heard it from Donald Trump himself. Don't forget, Donald Trump was part of the problem. Donald Trump was president of the United States. There is no larger figure in the world. He made the mistake that he did in recommending lockdowns. Sure, he couldn't control what the states did, but he recommended the lockdowns. And where he did have control, like federal agencies and national parks, he implemented lockdowns and mask mandates. Where he had control, he made that happen and he pushed for it across the states. Right? So you can't then later say, oh no, he didn't. Right? And his justification was again essentially a groupthink justification. And that was your Science Moment.